Hey everyone, welcome back. Have you ever thought about why people still go to church? It's a question that keeps popping up. And today we're going to try to get to the bottom of it, like a deep dive, looking at a few different things. We have this blog post by a guy, he's like a headmaster at a school in Texas. And then we have this really cool YouTube video. It's like inviting people to a church service, and then an article all about what it means to actually be part of a faith community.
Sounds like a good mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty complicated topic, that's for sure.
Totally. It's super interesting, this blog post, it's by Jay Ferguson. He's the headmaster I was talking about. He's from Tyler, Texas. And he points out this thing about the South that I never really thought about before. He says it's totally normal there to ask someone, where do you go to church? As a way to, get to know them. It's almost like an icebreaker or something.
Yeah.
But, I was thinking, in other places, if you were in Philadelphia or somewhere, that question would probably be kind of weird.
Yeah, probably. I guess it says a lot about how important faith is in the South.
Right.
Ferguson even calls the South Christ-haunted, which I think is a really interesting way to put it. Even if people aren't, actively going to church, it's the influence of Christianity is still there. It's woven into the culture.
Yeah. It's just part of life, even if you're not really, participating in it.
Mm-hmm.
But then he asked this question, and it really got me thinking. He's like, what does going to church really even mean? Is it just about showing up? Or is there more to it than that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Yeah, I think each of us has to kind of figure that out for ourselves.
Yeah.
Because, just because you're physically sitting in a church doesn't mean you're actually growing spiritually or connecting with, something bigger.
It's like that saying, right? You can lead a horse to water, but...
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious, what are some of the reasons people say they go to church, even if it's not always about, deep faith or anything like that?
Well, Ferguson in his blog and also that YouTube invitation we have, they talk about a few different reasons. Some people go because it's tradition, or maybe they feel like they should, kind of like a social obligation. It's what they've always done, or it's what their friends and family expect. And then there are people who are looking for comfort or encouragement or just a sense of community. Maybe they're going through a tough time and need some support.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really just about the social part, right? Seeing your friends, catching up with people, feeling like you're part of something. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, is there?
No, not at all. I think we all need connection, and church can be a good place for that.
Yeah, for sure.
But, both Ferguson and I think it's the pastor who's quoting, Matt Chandler, they both say that we shouldn't just treat church like a social club or like a self-help group. If that's all you're getting out of it, you might be missing the point,
Mm-hmm.
The deeper stuff, what it really means to be part of a faith community.
Okay, so that's where this Rediscovering Faith article comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
It goes deeper into why the Bible says we should be part of a church.
Yeah, that's right. It talks about this verse in Hebrews 10.24-25 basically says Christians should meet together regularly to encourage each other and help each other, grow in their faith and do good things.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because, when that was written, a lot of Christians were facing persecution.
Wow.
So for them, it wasn't just about being social. It was like a way to survive.
Wow, that puts things in perspective, huh?
Yeah, they really needed each other.
That's so interesting. And I guess it makes you think about, the challenges people face today. It's still important to have people you can count on, right?
Right. And that idea of helping each other and encouraging each other, it's all over the New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
This article also talks about 1 Corinthians 12.27. It's about the church being like the body of Christ.
Okay, so what does that even mean? Being part of a body?
I know, it's a pretty powerful image, right? It means that each person in the church is like a different part of the body. And we all have different gifts and talents, but we're all supposed to work together. We need each other.
So it's not just about what I get out of church, it's about what I give too.
Exactly. Everyone has something to offer, and when we come together as a community, we can do so much more than we could on our own. And that reminds me of what Ferguson was saying. Church isn't just a place to go to. It's a community to be part of.
Mm-hmm.
You have to participate, use your gifts to help others. It's not just about sitting there and listening to sermons and singing songs.
Yeah, that makes sense. But honestly, sometimes it's hard to know where to even start. Especially if you haven't been to church in a long time or if you've had bad experiences in the past. What do you do then?
That's a good question, and it's something we should definitely talk about more. But first, I think it's important to understand, why being part of a church community can be so beneficial. Not just for us personally, but for society as a whole.
It's interesting, when you think about the benefits of going to church, you usually think about like the spiritual stuff. But this Rediscovering Faith article, it actually talks about some psychological benefits too, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, like what?
Well, it mentions these studies like from the NIH, and they show that people who go to church regularly, they're actually less likely to have depression and anxiety.
That's pretty amazing. But I guess it kind of makes sense, right? When you're part of a community, you feel like you belong, and you're doing things that give your life meaning. I mean, all that stuff is good for your mental health.
Totally. It's like having this built-in support system,
Yeah.
A bunch of people who are there for you no matter what. And it's not just about like emotional support either. The article also talks about how church can help you grow as a person. Like you might learn new skills or become a better leader or just meet new people.
Yeah, that's true. It's like growth in all different areas of your life. That reminds me of something Ferguson talked about in his blog. He was saying how church can be a place where you learn to love people in a deeper way.
Oh, how so?
Well, he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said that we learn to love by loving the people who are hard to love. And honestly, who's harder to love than the people you're in community with?
Huh. That's true. When you see people week after week, you definitely see their flaws, that's for sure.
You see it all.
But I guess that's part of it, right? Learning to love people even when they're not perfect.
Yeah, it's about going beyond those surface level relationships and really connecting with people on a deeper level, where you can be honest about your struggles and your joys and, anything you're going through. And that's something the Rediscovering Faith article talks about too. It says it's important to find a church where you feel like you belong, where you can be yourself and feel accepted for who you are.
Yeah, I think that's key. For sure. Which makes me think about all the different types of churches out there. I mean, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. There are so many different denominations and styles of worship and, different beliefs about things. How do you even know where to start?
Right, it can be really overwhelming, especially if you've had bad experiences with church before, or if you're just starting to figure out what you believe.
Yeah.
And, the article is honest about that. It talks about the things that can keep people away from church. Like if you've been hurt in the past, or you're afraid of being judged, or you've even experienced like spiritual abuse.
Yeah, that's real.
It encourages people to be careful. Yeah. And to look for communities that really align with their values and what they believe.
So it's not about just following tradition or feeling pressured to conform.
No.
It's about finding a place where you can connect with your faith in a genuine way with other people who are on a similar path.
Exactly. And, the article also says that church isn't just about going to services on Sunday. It's about getting involved in other ways, too.
Like what kinds of things?
Like serving others, or joining a small group, or checking out different ministries. Finding ways to actually participate.
I can see how that would make a difference. It's one thing to just sit in a pew and listen, but it's another thing to actually roll up your sleeves and, get involved.
For sure. It's about finding ways to use your gifts and talents to give back to the community. And that's something that Trevin Wax's article, Why Does Anyone Go to Church?, really gets into. He has this whole breakdown of different types of churchgoers and their motivations, which I thought was super interesting.
Oh, okay. Tell me about it. What are these different types of churchgoers?
So he starts with the regulars. These are the people who go to church, out of habit.
Okay.
It's just what they do, like brushing their teeth or paying taxes.
That's part of their routine.
Exactly. They might not be super passionate about their faith, but they see church as important for, being part of the community and teaching their kids morals and stuff.
Interesting.
Then there's the responsibles. These are the people who are the backbone of the church. The volunteers, the committee members, the people who run the Sunday school, sing in the choir. They keep things going.
The doers, right.
Exactly. And they're usually motivated by a sense of duty and responsibility. They care about the church and they want to do their part.
Yeah.
And then you've got the respectables. These are the people who go to church mainly for the social benefits, especially for their kids.
Oh.
They want their kids to have a good moral foundation, and they want them to connect with other families who have similar values.
So it's kind of like a way to make sure their kids are surrounded by good influences.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are the reachers. These are the people who are actively exploring Christianity. They're searching for truth and asking big questions about life and faith.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, they might be new to church, Or maybe they're coming back after being away for a while.
I bet they have some really interesting perspectives.
They do. And then finally, there are the resolute. These are the people whose faith is like really strong and unwavering. They go to church because they love Jesus, they believe in what the Bible says, and they feel like being part of a community is really important for living out their faith.
So they're the ones who have really found like that connection between their faith and their everyday life.
Yeah, I think so. And they're often the ones who inspire other people with their commitment and their love for God and others.
It's inspiring.
Yeah. But, you know, with all these different types of people, all with their own reasons for being there,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder, how can a church possibly meet everyone's needs?
That's right. That's a challenge.
It is. And it's something that a lot of churches are trying to figure out, especially with how much the world is changing. But it's also an opportunity to get creative and think about new ways to help people feel like they belong and connect with each other in meaningful ways.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's actually something we're going to talk more about in our next segment.
Okay, so we've been talking about all these different kinds of people who go to church, the regulars, the resolute, everybody in between. But like, what about the future? What's church going to look like in like 10, 20, 50 years?
Well, nobody knows for sure, right? But this article by Trevin Wax, he makes some interesting guesses based on like the trends he sees with these different types of churchgoers.
Oh, okay. So what does he think is going to happen?
Well, he says we'll probably keep seeing fewer regulars, you know, the people who just go out of habit. Like younger people, they aren't really into just doing things the way they've always been done. They want something that feels real, you know?
Yeah. It has to actually mean something to them.
Exactly. And that's going to affect the responsibles too. The people who like run things, do all the work. Wax thinks there might be fewer of them in the future because there will be fewer people going to church overall. And also, you know, the needs of the community are changing.
Yeah, that's kind of worrying. Like, who's going to keep things running if the responsibles aren't there?
It's a good question. And I think it means churches need to change. You know, they need to figure out how to get people excited about using their talents and passions to help out. It can't just be about like filling spots on committees or whatever. It has to be about actually connecting with your faith and feeling like you're making a difference.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's more about finding joy in it, right? Like finding your purpose and helping others.
Totally. And then there's the respectables, the people who go to church mainly for the social aspect. Wax thinks this group might split up in the future.
Split up? Like how?
Well, some of them might stop going to church if it becomes too hard to like hold on to their Christian beliefs. Like if society keeps moving further away from those values.
Yeah, I can see that happening. It's tough, but it's real.
But then some respectables might actually like double down on their faith. Like they might start going to church even more because they're looking for that moral stability, you know?
Yeah.
Especially if the world feels really crazy and unpredictable.
So it's like the same things that push some people away actually pull other people in closer.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, right? It's a good reminder that like the church has always been around even when things were tough. When the world feels messed up, people look for hope and they look for meaning. And that leads us to the reachers, the people who are just starting to explore Christianity.
Yeah, the seekers. I think they're really important for the future of the church.
Definitely. Wax thinks there could be a lot more reachers if churches can figure out how to be welcoming, you know, and real, and like a place where you can actually think about the big questions.
Yeah, a place where it's okay to have doubts. Like that's part of faith too, right?
Absolutely. And then finally, there's the resolute, the people with really strong faith.
Yeah.
Wax asks a really important question about this group. He's like, will they be able to pass their faith on to the next generation?
That's a tough one. Like, it's one thing to have faith yourself, but it's way harder to, like, instill that in your kids.
Right. It's a big challenge for both churches and families. And it takes a lot of effort and creativity to connect with younger people.
You got to meet them where they are, right? Speak their language.
For sure. And in the end, I think it's about trusting that the message of, you know, God's love and grace, that it's powerful enough to reach across generations and cultures.
Okay, so big question. After all this deep diving, what would you say to someone who's listening and maybe not sure about church anymore? Like they're not sure if it's still relevant for them?
I'd ask them to think about what they're looking for in life. You know, do they want to feel like they belong somewhere? Do they need a community that supports them? Do they want to explore big questions about life and faith? Or maybe they want to make a difference in the world. Because if so, church might be a good place to start. It's not perfect, it's definitely messy, and it's always changing. But really, it's just people trying to live out their faith, love their neighbors, and make the world a better place.
It's about finding that connection, right? And a sense of purpose and hope. That's what can make life feel, I don't know, more meaningful.
Yeah, I think so.